Hi and welcome to the latest episode of One Patriots Place, brought to you by the E2G Sports Network with Clazzy Clare Cooper and Thomas Murphy. Joining us today, it is the quarterback connoisseur. He's rather versatile and he's super smart. It is the John Grisham of the NFL, as always, one of my favourites, and I reckon one of yours, Mr. Mark Schofield. Mark, welcome back to the show. How are things with you?
I'm doing well. It is fantastic to be back here. It is always fun to join you fine friends of mine anytime I get to come on. It's been a long week or so. I'm not quite sure what day it is. I'm operating on, I think, maybe 10 hours of sleep since Thursday. Again, don't know what day it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a grind. But we're slowly coming back from it. But excited to be here.
Always, man. Always great to have you back.
I gotta say, I'm feeling you on the sleep deprivation. I mean, there isn't enough makeup in the world to really cover up the lack of sleep that I had over the draft with it starting at 1 a.m. and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I got the hat pulled down. Like it's brutal. And the worst part for me was 4 hours Thursday night, 4 hours Friday night. Saturday, the draft ends around 7 p.m. here. And I'm like, all right, I could finally get caught up. I go to bed early because I knew I was getting up because you had, Azerbaijan at 7 a.m. here.
Yeah.
And so I go to sleep early. And at 4 a.m., the cats decide, look, it's go time. And I didn't get back to sleep. So I got another 4 hours on Saturday night. It was just,
oh no,
it was just brutal.
Marky, do you have an Instagram or something?
I do. I barely use it.
Okay,
he doesn't.
We need more cat stuff on the Instagram.
I put a lot of cats. Although I did put another reason why I'm not really sleeping well. I put a picture of Rosie up right as overtime started.
Okay,
Sunday night. Because she couldn't watch the game, she was just watching me. I'd like to think it was because she was nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think it was because she was, of course, as a cat, a Panthers fan. But it was probably just, it's dinner time. So what are you doing, staring at this big box thing?
They couldn't hold it together for a minute, Mark. For a minute,
59 seconds.
Yep,
59 seconds. I'm still not okay from that. I mean, I'm just not.
I don't blame you.
And I was on the SB Nation Monday Football Monday show, and I was on that yesterday. So you had RJ Ochoa, Pete Sweeney, Jeremy Reisman, and Jeremy, who's a Lions fan, had to make fun of me for that. Like, Lions fans are making fun of Bruins fans.
Wow.
That's the world we're living in right now.
That's how bad you got it. And there's a certain coach out there in Las Vegas right now.
Yeah.
That is still in the playoffs.
Yeah, imagine that.
And the record-setting Boston Bruins are headed.
Watching it with the rest of us. Watching it with the rest of us from the.
No, they shouldn't be allowed to. They shouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't even watch hockey anymore, people. I'm a Whalers fan, and I have been boycotting the NHL for 30 years. And and this has me upset. I was upset for all of you out there. You deserved better, and I don't know, but we're a football show. We're a Patriots show.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm feeling rather redundant in this top square over here. As much as I'm obviously a Bruins fan and know what happened, it's not really kind of broadcast a lot over here. So I wasn't fortunate to see any of it. So I know of, but did not experience. So yeah, I'm feeling a little bit like, is it time for me to leave now? Am I done with the show for today?
No,
not after everything. Do I get the day off?
Not after everything I put you through this morning, sweetheart. No, I should sit here and be quiet. Marky, for the first time in history, we have done post-draft shows with you every year that One Patriots Place has been around. I think there's a dozen worth. For the first time, I'm going to start out with a question on an undrafted free agent. What do you think of Malik Cunningham? The contract he signed, and will this kid remain a quarterback?
I think he will remain a quarterback.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not surprised at the contract. I mean, Tom Pelissero said that there was basically competition for him.
Yeah.
And this is, with the new NFL sort of CBA and structure and all of that, when we get into late on day 3, if you're an agent, if you're a player, you don't want to get drafted.
No.
Like, you would much rather be an unsigned free agent, pick your landing spot, pick your opportunity, because you could pick it based on position room. Like, if you're a running back, you'd much rather find a spot where you might get reps as opposed to getting drafted by a team that is just using you for a camp body. And so, but from teams, they'd rather draft you because you might have to have this kind of guaranteed money and a sign-in bonus for an undrafted free agent that might be higher than for a 7th round pick. And so that's one of the weird juxtapositions in the NFL right now. But with Cunningham in particular, athletic, explosive, there's things that he does as a quarterback that I do like. And watching him, I felt in the back of my mind that some team's going to either draft him late on day 3 or go the UDFA route and look at him as a long-term developmental project, like 2+ type years. I'm not looking at him as like, okay, they're going to move him to wide receiver, or they're going to move him here or no, they're looking at him as a long-term quarterback because there are things, like I said, that he does. Obviously, the athleticism is one of the first things that sort of jumps out at you because you see that on film. You see that even at the combine, you sort of saw that athleticism.
Even the decision making that I saw on film to go and, I went and checked out a little bit of it. And I even like the decision making that this young man makes. And I'm glad that you said this because I really want to see this kid remain a quarterback and be there, 2 years down the line and see where we are, where the Patriots are at the position. I think it was a great move. I'm not sure why Bill didn't draft him simply to just make sure that he got him. But I'm glad.
Because they needed 17 guards. That's why, Murph. They didn't draft him because they needed 17 guards to line up in front of Mac Jones and no tight ends, but we'll touch on that later.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, I mean, there's one, like I found my notes to pull up, like his game against JMU, there's a lot of moments where you could see him fighting in the pocket. He had a throw against Syracuse on a 1st and 10, midway through the 3rd quarter, where he's fighting in the pocket, keeps his eyes downfield.
I watched that
finds
game.
the crosser late in the play for a big gain. And so there's moments when you see quarterback play from the pocket. It's not just speed option and he's bursting 40 yards for a touchdown. There's signs of quarterback play from the pocket from him. And so I look at him as like long-term developmental project at the quarterback position. And if we're here this time next year and they're still rolling with Mac Jones, but it's like a good season.
Yeah.
Not bad enough where you're going to completely move on. Not good enough where you're going to give him a contract extension. You're going to wait and see. That could be an opportunity for Malik Cunningham to perhaps make some noise down the road. I don't think this is a position switch or anything like that.
This is going to sound stupid. I know it, but I'm good with the stupid questions. No, I'm good with the stupid questions. You said, because I didn't quite realize, you said in regards to undrafted free agent, he got to sort of choose where he went. To that end, obviously I know that this is just going to be opinion. You're not going to know what's in his head, and I fully appreciate that. But to that end, considering he's such an unpatriot-esque quarterback, he isn't quite where the Patriots go down and stuff like that. And considering that there's a load of I didn't want to swear, load of stuff, bad stuff being said about the Patriots. Sorry, all I could think of was swear words. But the Patriots aren't out there as favoured at the moment, coming back off what happened last year, sort of poor coaching and stuff. Just from your belief, what do you think really would have tipped the scales for him? Can it simply be money at this point in his career?
I mean, money's probably a big one. I mean, if you're an undrafted free agent, like the odds of sticking around, they're low. I mean, draft capital creates opportunity, and the Will Levis discussion, right? There's one way to look at Will Levis going to the 2nd round, which is there won't be pressure for him to get on the field or anything like that. Like, they can take their time with him. The flip side to that coin is if you get drafted in the 1st round, there might be pressure to get on the field, but you might get more chances.
Right.
Just ask his new teammate, Malik Willis, about what it's like to slide to day 2 and how long the organization is going to stick with you. And so you look at, if you get drafted, you've got at least a little bit better odds at sticking around. If you're an undrafted free agent, there's a chance this is your one bite at a contract apple. And so I think money is part of it. The other part of it is look at the quarterback room overall. Like they've got, Trace
yeah.
McSorley coming in. There's an opportunity here for him to at least show enough for this organization to keep him over McSorley. There's at least an opportunity there. And so, I think money is the big one. If it were me, if I were advising him, I'd say, look, this is the biggest offer you're going to get. Make the most of it. But then you look at the quarterback room, and maybe there's a belief that he could somehow be QB3. And so I think it's money / QB room are the two big reasons. To your point, the sort of underlying aspect there, it's not the idea that he's going to win a ring this year. Like you look around the AFC, and that's probably not a belief.
It struck me as curious because as soon as you said it, it was one thing I didn't realize about the undrafted free agents was the sort of the chance of, well, yeah, it makes sense, obviously, when you think about it. But yeah, it surprised me. And with the Patriots having the sort of the reputation that they've got right now, is Bill Belichick still big enough as a pull, I suppose? But that wasn't actually my real question. That was just something that came off of what you said, because I've learned something new, which I always do when we get to talk to you. So that's cool. I've got to ask you, I need to get this out of the way early so that we've done it and we've moved on and we've gotten over it, because I'm still trying to get over it. Because everything that was said prior to the draft was, even people who don't like the tight end position understood that the tight end position this season was something that the Patriots could do with looking at, because they didn't have depth. They've got two guys on 1 year contracts, and this was the deepest, best draft class for tight ends. I'll get there in a minute. In the end, this in a decade. And they really did have some outstanding tight ends this season. And I'm not being biased when I say that. Other people have said exactly what I am saying. So I get everybody gives me the, oh, well, you just love tight ends. And yes, I do. No, but I can be completely unbiased.
Stop defending yourself. This is a legit question. This was a legit hole coming in right now. We have
It wasn't the biggest hole, but it was still a hole. And there was so much there. That's the thing. There was so much there. And they had all these 4th round picks. I get the whole, taking of the cornerback. Totally. I get the taking of the edge guy, Keon White. I get it. That's not where I'm going with this whole tight end thing.
Okay.
But in between 76 and 144, they had lots of picks they could have bundled to move up with someone to pick up one of those tight ends. Mark, seriously. Do you have any kind of what is your thought process on this? Do you think they should have done, or do you think it was just it's fine?
Yeah, I mean, this was probably one of the biggest shocks of the entire draft weekend to me, that they didn't add a tight end, because everything you said about A, their needs at the position, and B, the depth of this tight end class would lead you to believe that, a pairing could be found here. And, you're right. Look, Daniel Jeremiah prior to the combine said that he had 11 day 1 or 2 grades on tight ends, which was the highest he ever had. One of my bold predictions for this draft was that we'd get 10 tight ends drafted on days 1 or 2. We got 9. So it was a very good group. And there were opportunities. Like you said, at 76, they go, with Marte out of Sacramento State, the first non-combine invite drafted, which is quintessential Belichick. Now, he's a very intriguing prospect, very excited about him. But a couple spots later, the South Dakota State tight end comes off the board. And so there were spots to take tight ends. They just went in a different direction. Now, is this quintessential Belichick zigging while everybody else is zagging? Belichick doing the exact opposite of what we all expected? Maybe. Maybe there's a thought that they didn't address it now, but come cut down day, there's going to be good tight ends available, both tight ends that may have gotten drafted and then just didn't make their teams, or what? Maybe. So I'm sure that there will be some subsequent moves at the position, but the fact that they didn't go tight end was a shocker to me, because I thought at some point, even if it's later on day 3, just, the Old Dominion tight end was still out there. Just draft somebody. They just went in a completely different direction each time they were on the clock.
That's the one that got me the most, because I looked at in between sort of when the Patriots took Marty and kind of when they went down to round 5. And in between that and then there was the Packers took Tucker Kraft, the Steelers took Washington.
Yep.
The 49ers took Cameron Lato of Alabama. The Titans took Josh Wiley from Cincinnati.
Yeah, Josh Wiley was another one that sort of surprised me.
Did me because and then the Colts got Will Mallory out of Miami. And then, and at 220, Zach Kuntz went. And I mean, everybody was, I don't know what the deal is with this guy, because he performed crazy numbers. But obviously, somebody just, the value in him wasn't there. But yeah, he got down to 220 and he went to the Jets, man. The Jets. What the actual are we doing when we're letting the Jets pick up a tight end when we could do with what?
I had the Patriots taking Tucker Kraft at 76.
Yeah,
and I thought that was pushing it.
Yeah, but they just went in an absolutely different direction. I mean, again, we've seen this before. I mean, overall, I know we'll probably talk about the draft. I like the draft, but that was the thing that like surprised me the most.
Mm-hmm. It is. That's the way I looked at it. I like this draft. I don't want to say all of the players that they decided to take, but they hit every single pick, with probably, the exception of Mapo in third didn't shock me as to where they grabbed them or whether or not they had the talent to play. Let's talk about Mapo a little bit, but you said before that you think he's going to be a good developmental player. With the Patriots' third pick, did they need somebody at this position to develop? Is this something that is maybe writing on the wall for Kyle Duggar or some of the other guys that are slated in at that safety spot?
I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's viewed more as a sort of weak side linebacker than anything else. I mean, I've seen some people say that, like, his first role in the NFL might be as a weak side linebacker.
I think he could play the Sam, yeah.
Yeah, and sort of just let him flow around and create and be athletic, like,
But is that Bill? I mean, we've seen what guys who freelance and flow around do. They end up in Cleveland and then back here on a lesser contract.
Yeah, I mean,
are you looking at it from Bill, or are we talking Bill or Josh or Mayo now? Not Josh, Mayo now.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean,
there's a good point.
On this, I mean, some of the other names that we're talking about, like Jamie Collins and others, where they've sort of looked at athleticism and allowed them to sort of be athletic and flow around a little bit. And, if you freelance too much, then obviously that gets you to the Cleveland Browns. But, I think that, they clearly saw something with him, with his aggressiveness downhill, his ability to tackle, and maybe there's an idea that he could be in some, multiple safety packages, your big safety. So there's that hybrid nature to him. I don't think this is a reflection on Duggar. I think it's more just they like the potential here. They clearly saw something in what he's done and took advantage of the opportunity. Now, you might have been able to grab him around later. I mean, there is that. But, the more I stick around the draft and the more I cover it and think about it, the more I'm just a believer. Just get your guys. If you have a grade on a player, because all of us on the outside, we have consensus boards and things like that, but they have access to so much more information. It's so much more time spent with, their coaches themselves, what they can do in visits and things like that. If you've got a feeling about a player, if you see a role for a player, just get them. The fact that Mark Schofield thinks you should have drafted the South Dakota State tight end with that pick instead of this kid, that means nothing. Like, right. Mark Schofield's an idiot. Like, that's just it. Like, the people in the building know much more than I do. Maybe it turns out that it pans out, maybe it doesn't. But if this is your guy, get him.
To be honest, looking at some of this draft, I think I disagree with your point and think that way more. But anyway, the only problem that I've got, the issue that I've got is I do like this draft. I actually really like that they got a kicker and a punter, and I like that they've got a punter, and I want to ask you about him in a minute. I think the thing for me, the thing that's just niggling at me as a fan is they got 2 guards and they got 3 cornerbacks, 2 late cornerbacks. Those 2 guards and those 2 later cornerbacks. Are you telling me that you needed all those 4? You couldn't have done without a couple of them and got yourself a decent tight end?
Yeah, I mean, again, the tight end, the lack of a tight end pick, a surprise because, You could have gone, the
It's
Liberty
going to
wide
take me 12
receiver,
months to get over
Amir
this.
Speed, like those
Till the
were
next
the
draft.
old Dominion tight end would stare you in the face. Now,
Right.
a lot of these guys kick return, punt return, special teams. Like, there's that. And maybe part of the reason they passed on some of these tight ends was, well, maybe they can't contribute on special teams. And we're going to get some players that we know can at least contribute on special teams if they make this roster. They've had some luck with undrafted corners, late round corners before. And so they've done a very good job at identifying talent at that position. And so that makes sense to me. The LSU wide receiver is a fascinating pick.
Yeah.
Because when we all did our way too early mock drafts last year, like I had Stroud to the Texans, I had Addison to the Vikings.
Right.
I also had Keyshawn Boutte to the Jacksonville Jags at pick 6 overall. Like, this is a player that people thought was going to be a round 1 wide receiver. Then he tested like a Mack truck. He has the 3-point turn radius of a Ford F-150. Like, he can't move. Like, I was in the stands at the combine, and it's like, is he moving to tight end? Is he going to move to tackle? Like, but to get him in the 6th and just take a shot on him, I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Like, it's not like they drafted him at 76.
True.
But yeah, I mean, some of the later picks, I think, were just a nod to depth, special teams, things like that. Again, still surprising they didn't take a tight end, but the Liberty wide receiver, the corner that speed that they took late, probably just a nod to special teams ability than anything else.
I think to me, it's just the whole thing. The 2 guards. Do we need 2 guards? We could have done with Josh Wiley out of Cincinnati. He went at 147. So
I've got a little point to make. After I was as confused, confuddled, and downright upset as everybody who was watching the draft, watching all those guards come off the board. But when you go and you look at the Patriots depth chart at guard and center, and you see James Ferenz at second on the depth chart
at all 3.
At all 3.
Yeah.
It kind of makes a little bit more sense. It was kind of like we didn't see the forest for the trees in getting set for this.
No, and that's I get it, and I don't disagree. It's the skill set that they avoided. It's the same as when everybody was up in arms about the not taking a wide receiver about 2 years ago when the class was like so deep it was oozing.
No, I got you.
It's gonna just take me a while to get through. I want to ask you about the punter, Mark. I really do, because I like me a punter. So I'm quite happy that they've got me a new punter, because I was really sad when Jake Bailey went, as you all know. I like Jake Bailey.
We know.
I was really in. Yeah.
We know.
Now, I need to ask you, because I've said this guy's name multiple ways, multiple times. So I wanted to check how you would pronounce our new punter's name, because I know that sounds really dumb, but I have gone around it in all sorts of different ways. So I'm wondering what you were saying, because I kind of have a Brees or a Bryce, and I have a Barringer or a Baringer or a Beringer. Where are we going with this new little piece of hotness that we have got at punter?
Well, I furiously Googled it, and it's Bryce Beringer.
Beringer.
That is the official pronunciation as listed by the school. So there is that. But
he has a leg. Does he have?
He has a leg.
Yep.
I mean, when you're sort of looking at him, led the nation both gross and net punted yards. Yeah, a 20-yarder. I mean, a 60-yarder. Excuse me, not a 20-yarder. In 8 of 12 games. He can also directionally punt fairly well. From what we've seen, and so I think that's a nice pick. I also am reminded of one of my favorite tweets of all time, which was in 2019. Justice Mosqueda, when the Patriots traded up for a punter, he said, "All right, kids, it's time to go home. Like, the draft's over. Go see your families." The Patriots added a kicker. They added a kicker and a punter. Like, that was the sign that the draft was over. It was time to see our families again.
I love it. I love
it too.
I do. It's one thing I do.
They needed both. Both. But I do want to circle back to the UCLA guard for a minute.
Yeah, mate.
I love this pick.
Yeah,
I absolutely love this pick. Number 1.
I'm convinced that Bill wouldn't have made the pick earlier if he knew Mafe was going to be there then.
And he's a quintessential pick. Obviously, they got to see him, number 1, which, again, Shrine Bowl, having that opportunity, I think is important. I talked to somebody at UCLA. The kid barely missed an assignment on the field, if ever. Incredibly smart, player on the field, like processed information on the field as well as
Yep.
anybody he'd ever seen. Like that screams to me Patriot. Like, and so I was really excited when they drafted him. I was not surprised when they drafted him, knowing that information about him going into the draft. And so that's a pick that, people say, how could you love a 5th round pick? I love that pick. I absolutely love it.
It's a great pick. And, I'm sure that if he wasn't there, Carter Warren would have been grabbed.
Right.
Went right after him. Like I said, I think that, Sal is interesting, but I don't think they would have. For some reason, they decided to go with him before they went with Mafi. What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just sort of a look at where the board stacked up at that point in the draft. There was probably a thought that Sal, because of some of what he did, some of his size, some of his footwork skills that he showed on film, that he was probably graded just a bit higher.
Yep.
But they probably would into day 3 realize and look,
Brandon Thorne was super high on him.
Yeah. When Brandon Thorne speaks, we listen.
Yep.
And they probably went into day 3 thinking, okay, we want to add 2 interior offensive linemen because, like you said, when you've got one guy that's basically your interior offensive line backup plan,
yep,
you've got to add bodies there.
And so James Ferencz, bless him.
Yes. There is that aspect to it. So
if
they probably
Ted Karras, I'd be a little bit more confident. Just saying.
Right. So they probably went into day 3 with a plan that look, we could add 2 here. Sal was probably the one that they had graded higher on their board and on most boards. And I think sort of consensus rankings bear that out at least somewhat with the information we have on the outside looking in. But they wanted to add both. And then Mafi was the sort of quintessential Patriots player, played rugby in high school. There's a fantastic photo of him floating around there. So, it's sort of the idea that play multiple sports in high school kids. Like last year's draft, I haven't seen the numbers on this year, but last year, something like 96% of the players drafted played multiple sports in high school. So play multiple sports, kids.
That's it. That's why I forced Butchie into wrestling.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to play. He didn't want to play football because they knew they'd make him an offensive lineman like his old man, and he didn't want to do that.
Right.
He didn't want to do that. So he went and got beat up in wrestling. Never sign your kids up for wrestling in high school, folks. If you've never seen wrestling at real wrestling in your lifetime, because you will lose your mind, because I can't believe the positions that my kid was bent into in his junior and senior year. I had to leave. Mark, let's get back to the top. How shocked were you that Gonzalez was the pick, and how shocked were you that he fell first to 14 and Bill was able to get him at 17? It was brilliance how he worked this board.
I wasn't shocked that Gonzalez was the pick because watching him, A, he was my CB1 for whatever that's worth.
Yep. B,
watching him, it was like, this is quintessential Belichick cornerback. Like Belichick is going to love him because, scheme versatile, with some of his best plays last year came in zone coverage situations, but he's a press coverage, man coverage corner. Like he can do both at an extremely high level. So I wasn't surprised that he was their pick. Now, what surprised me and what terrified me in the moment was that he was there at 14, because I thought he'd be gone within the first 6 selections. I thought if it wasn't Seattle at 5, it'd be Detroit at 6, like that he was coming off the board. So the fact that he was there at 14 surprised me. The fact that they then traded out terrified me. And the next 30 minutes of my life were an absolute emotional roller coaster because, with Washington sitting there at 16, I knew they were going corner. Like I'd been told that a long time ago. Like everybody's putting offensive line, and I'm just like, no, they're drafting a corner. Now, Forbes, I think, kind of fit what Washington does a little bit more. He's more of a cloud, cover 2, like pro flat corner. And so, it was still a tightrope walk because I was terrified in the back of my mind that Ron Rivera was going to say, well, this kid fell to us, we're going to draft him.
Right.
So when they went with Forbes, I
exhaled.
And then B, remembered it's still Bill Belichick, and there's probably like a third string safety out there that he's got his eyes on, or this is when you see the trade up for Will Levis, because remember, they took that meeting with Levis for that reason to evaluate him for a trade up. And so oh gosh, we're going to hear that Minnesota has come up or Seattle's come up for Levis, and we're going to miss our chance to get Gonzalez. But no, it worked out. So again, very good job. Now I know that there are some knocks on Gonzalez. There are some people that look at his game against Georgia and think wasn't physical or didn't play the run. You draft him to cover people,
Right.
again, if you could put him on an island and he could take away wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 or however you want to do it that given week, and you don't have to worry about what he's doing and what his assignments are and him missing them. I don't care. I'm not going to draft a corner to make tackles and run fits and things like that. I'm drafting them to cover somebody.
Right.
That's what he does at an extremely high level. So is he a physical corner? No. Was he Devon Witherspoon, who was a physical corner? Yeah. But you're drafting him to be on an island and be 40 yards downfield, not 2 yards in the backfield.
Bravo. And I'm telling you right now, with all the tape that I've seen, there isn't a number 2 wide receiver in this league that this kid can't cover. And in the Patriots system, that's what they're looking for, is a lockdown guy that will stop every single number 2 on the planet while they bracket number 1s and make their life a living hell.
Yep.
This kid was a fantastic pick. Like Marky said, he was the number 1 guy on my board. I was thinking that the Patriots would have to trade up into the top 10 and ending up coming away with an extra 4th round pick. And I want everybody to stop saying that the Patriots should have gotten more for trading back. And, looking at charts, it costs more money to do business here in New England than it does anywhere else. You don't get as much back.
Yeah, no.
It costs you a little bit more when you go out there because nobody wants to help the Patriots out at all.
Yeah, I mean, why would you, right?
Yeah, that's it. Why would you? And so I love it. I can't wait to see this kid in a Patriots uniform. And the other kid that I really can't wait to see is Jake Andrews.
Yeah. I have a good friend down at Troy that said, "Look, you guys are getting a starter here. Maybe not next year. You're getting a starter."
He is. This kid is a fantastic run grader. We know how important that is to Bill. It's just his pass pro needs some polishing. And with Adrian Clem coming in here, do you think that that's a pretty good bet there at that point? And like I said, James Ferenz is the only backup. Bill got caught with his pants down again on the offensive line last year through injury and apathy and everything else, and it cost this team, I think, 2 or 3 wins. Mark, out of this this class of interior linemen that the Patriots are bringing in, from the people that you've talked to, from everything that I'm hearing, but I want to hear from you. How smart are these kids? Because there was a lot of stupid on this offensive line last year.
Very smart. I mean, again, Murphy, the other thing, 3.86 GPA at UCLA. I mean, this is a smart class. This is a smart interior offensive line class that they've brought in. And, with respect to Andrews and the pass protection, Murph, you know this better than anybody. As a center, you're not getting a lot of one-on-ones.
No,
you're getting help from somebody.
Right.
Somebody slided to you. So the pass pro aspect of life as a center can sort of get, shaped a little bit. You're going to get some help. And so, yeah, if there's a situation where he's left on an island with an Aaron Donald of the world, he might lose. But, a lot of people lose in that situation. And so, there are things schematically that you can do. There are things, protection-wise that you can do to sort of help him out if he's pressed into action or as he gets better as, a pure pass protector. But it's a very smart interior offensive line class. I've heard nothing but good things about all 3 of them from that perspective. Murphy, the one that stands out the most from everything I've been told. But, that matters. I mean, look, it's hard to play offensive line in today's NFL. Not just the athletes you're going up against, but the things that defenses are doing with the sim pressure looks and the mugged up looks and the read blitzes that we're seeing now when you're trying to diagnose and decipher, you've got you're a center, you've got, 2 linebackers walked up, one on each shoulder, and one's going to drop, one's going to come based on how you turn. So you're trying to delay that and deke them. And then it ends up that they both come and you're totally out of luck there. Defenses are smart. Defensive coordinators are smart. And so you've got to be able to match that and think and process and do all that stuff on the fly. All of three of these stand out in that area.
That's it. Were you surprised that Clem didn't stump harder for some of his guys coming over from Oregon?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but it's hard. I mean, you want to bang the table for some of your guys, but when you look at talent,
but you weren't
and
taking them in the fourth round. Yeah, I got you.
I mean, that's
by
just
then
it.
It was filled out.
Yeah.
I got you. Go ahead, Claire. I'm sorry. I started
We started talking about offensive line, and Murph was excited.
I did.
Well, this is it. I get very excited when it comes to offensive line, but I keep keying up a question, and Murph keeps just. I was like, oh,
I'm sorry.
Never mind. No,
go ahead.
I do like the Andrews thing. I'm really interested. I'm waiting to see that. See, if they hadn't have drafted those other two guards, I kind of would have put in, well, they've still got Cody Russi. What's the chances of moving Andrews to right guard? Because I know that he played a year of right guard. He did, was it 12 games in his junior year at right guard? So it was are they kind of mixing it up there a little bit? But I think the drafting of the two guards maybe sort of answers my question in that regard. Anyway, so two things, because I want to get these in because I know that Murph's going to take all the time. So quickly, which opponent kind of concerns you now in regards to the draft? Did the draft alter your opinion of sort of any of our key opponents? Mostly the division, really, because of it being, you play them twice a year and stuff like that. Did anything that the Bills, Finns, or Jets do? I want to take the Aaron Rodgers thing out because that's not to do with the draft. I know, obviously, that happened, but I want to mean purely draft situation. Now, for me, the only thing that I saw of any kind of, I would say, interest was that the Bills picked up Dalton Kincaid. And I really want to see this guy play, but not in a Bills uniform twice a year. That's really not going to be fun, I got to admit. But what do you think of our divisional opponents at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting, Claire, because, all three of them were kind of limited in what they could do in the draft because of things that had happened prior, right? With Buffalo.
The naughty Dolphins.
Well, naughty, bad, Miami. So they were, watching the draft with the rest of us on night one. There were rumors they might come in. They really liked Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama, but he came off the board inside the first 15 picks. And so that kind of was a bit of a surprise. So they didn't come back in the draft for him. And so, Miami, because of that, they didn't do too much. The two that kind of caught my attention, one was the Kincaid pick. Dorsey wanted 12 personnel. He wanted going into last year, he wanted that 12 personnel package. They tried to bootstrap it with the OJ Howard move. That didn't pan out. And then they were left scrambling, much like New England, with this was our offensive plan for this season going in, and now we got to figure it out going forward. Now they've got closer to that, because Knox is going to be your inline guy. Kincaid's going to be your Big 12 slot type guy, similar to Mike Gesicki, because he's more of that move type tight end. And it's again back to that idea, to the point that was just raised in the comments, that how do you treat that as a defense? Do you treat it like 12, play big, and now you've got Kincaid matched up against a safety or a linebacker, or treat it like 11, and then Kincaid sort of blocks out of the slot? I mean, he's not great at it, but he's okay, and maybe gets a little bit better at it by the time the season comes along. So I think the Kincaid one is interesting. And again, putting the Rodgers thing aside, because that was the big move for the Jets, the Will McDonald pick fascinates me, because he played as basically a 4-eye. In Iowa State's 3-3-5, 3 safety defense, they had him basically head up or inside on the offensive tackle. But when you see how on the phone call that they released of Salah calling him, he's like, we're getting you out of that. You're not going to be doing that anymore. You're going to be bumped in the wide 9. We're going to let you go off the edge. I think that could really work out, because he was kind of, again, this is part of the tricky thing about, evaluating prospects. He was asked to do one thing in college. He's going to do something completely different at the next level. And so it's a bet on his athleticism, explosiveness, and traits. If it works out, that could make that defense really good. because now you've got what they've got at the second level and the third level, and obviously with Sauce and everything else, that could be a very good defense if that pans out. And there was a fascinating conversation. My buddy Charles McDonald at Yahoo sat down with Will Anderson right before the draft, and he talked about, so you can watch Anderson's answer to this, the difficulty in playing inside as that 4-eye when you're in a phone booth, to what it's like when you're outside and you're suddenly in space and you can use that athleticism, burst, and explosiveness off the edge. That kind of scares me a little bit, because McDonald could thrive in that kind of role for New York.
Before we get to, because we've got a couple of things in the chat, but because Murph has got loads of questions he's taken, I want to ask loads of questions. So I just need to get to a couple first, because you know how much I love to pick your brain. Are you concerned at this stage at the lack of a third down back still on the Patriots?
I mean, a little bit. I still think that because of the way the cut downs and everything work, they'll have opportunities to add at some point at that position. And and I think sort of when you look at what Stevenson can do, A, B, the hope and expectations for Pierre Strong to perhaps sort of grow into that role. Like, I think the plan is Stevenson's going to be your feature sort of back. Maybe you get it from somebody else, Strong, somebody you already have on the roster. And if by cut down day, third preseason game, you haven't solved that bit of it, then you can start to look elsewhere. I think there's a confidence in the room that in the organization with what they've got in the room, they can figure out that answer through training camp.
Mm-hmm. Which draft pick do you, I mean, the one that might be obvious is, I don't know whether I want to take kind of Gonzalez out of it because he almost seems like a given, but which draft selection do you think that the Patriots have made that is the most important short-term and long-term? So that one guy that makes an impact immediately, significantly, and that one guy that is like a slow burn and we're going to see something really impressive kind of further down the line. So it's going to be like an investment versus a quick hit right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think oddly the easy answer in the short term is Chad Ryland, the kicker. He's down the street from me in Maryland. Fantastic kicker, has kicked in elements, which I think is critically important because you're going to get some cold, wind, raw, rainy types of days. Kicking in the Big Ten, he had a big kick at the Big House in conditions that was, I think he had 2 50-yarders against Michigan in the Big House on the road. And so Murph and I talked about him like months ago about how we were excited about him and to see New England draft him. I think, he contributes in the short term. I think long term, some of the sort of developmental guys we talked about, whether it's Marte, whether it's Butte, the LSU receiver, if they could figure these guys out, as well as sort of the interior lineman we've talked about, like those guys will probably pay off more longer term. But a kicker that, if he wins the job and he's scoring points for you next year, that's a big, contribution from a rookie.
Yeah. Before the draft, I will have asked you, I'm pretty darn sure because I ask everybody, who their draft crush is. So going into the draft, I'll have asked you your draft crush. Coming out of the draft, who is your draft crush still?
Patriots specific or just league wide?
Well, you can just go with kind of whatever, because it can be someone that was taken higher than you anticipated. This is just for fun. Murph's laughing in the corner. But yeah, just because it might have changed during the draft. You may now have a draft crush that is on the Patriots because you so want him on the Patriots. So there is no specifics. There is just a generality.
It's Gonzalez. I mean, I loved him. I mean, I wrote the piece, weeks ago why he's CB1, and I talked about his athleticism, his movement skills. I broke down to an almost embarrassingly annoying degree, like one pass breakup he had against UCLA, but talked about, the coverage call and why it's a difficult coverage to play. And I'll get nerdy for a second. It's called 5 Cougar. Now, basically, cover 2, like straight cover 2, the corner is in the curl flat, but with the way that offenses and defenses have evolved, sometimes you hear or see what's called trap coverage, where you get a receiver on the outside goes vertical, inside receiver runs it out, the corner starts to drop vertically, but then traps that out route if the QB throws it. If you want, Xavier Howard had a pick 6 of Mac Jones 2 years ago in their season finale on a trap coverage. But quarterbacks have figured it out because if they're watching it happen, the corner's like looking at them, they can know, okay, well, he's going to trap this. I'll throw the vertical route. So then you have what's called 5 Cougar, which is where the corner makes a man coverage turn, right? And so what he does is he turns his back to you as a quarterback. So you see him run it away from you, sprint it away, but the corner is looking inside over his inside shoulder. And if he sees that out route come and the QB throw it, he immediately stops on a dime, breaks on it. It's tough to execute, but he did it on a play against UCLA and absolutely lit up the tight end. Again, for the people that say he can't play physical, he absolutely unloads on him, and it's an incompletion. And from the awareness, the recognition, the change of direction skills, which go to his combine performance, because I talk a lot about change of direction skills and why it matters and why some combine drills matter for the corner position, to how he unloads on the tight end. I called it the sort of put the pen down, close the Google spreadsheet. That's it. That's the play. I want this kid on my team. And so, yeah, I'm not lying when, I mean, in the Slack channel at SB Nation, as that was unfolding Thursday night, I was losing my mind. I thought I was going to get fired for some of the things that I was sort of doing and saying in there, because I was like literally pulling my hair out. Like, they're going to miss on an opportunity to draft my favorite player at a very important position, but they pulled it off. And so he was sort of my draft crush going in. He's my draft crush coming out. Like, I'm not overstating this. He could have a multiple all-pro kind of career here in New England under Bill Belichick. Like, that's the kind of player he is.
Murph, who's your draft crush coming out? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was coughing a little bit earlier.
Hey, who's your draft crush coming out then?
Mine?
Yeah.
You know, for the Patriots, it's Gonzalez. I'm right there with Mark. It really is. He was my favorite player coming into the draft, at the top of the draft. But my draft crush remained Deuce Vaughn.
And
why the
and
Patriots
said in the thing, they could have taken him as well. He was there. Yeah.
Why the Patriots didn't take him down there in the 6th, and he ended up going to Dallas, ended up being reunited with Dad, and it was a beautiful phone call, and we all love it. But Claire talked earlier about the lack of a third down back, and I just think that what Bill O'Brien would have been able to do with the 6th round pick, with the talent, speed, and direction change that Deuce. I haven't seen a kid stop and start in the way that Deuce Vaughn does in a very, very long time. If you added, 5 inches to him and 85 pounds, he would have been the consensus #1 pick in this draft. I think he's just that talented if he was still able to do what he does.
And what's amazing about him, they ran him in between the tackles.
Yeah.
And he did it extremely. Like, you're not doing that with him at the NFL level, or maybe on a draw or something like that.
He didn't sit there and hide behind a big fat center and wait for a holder. He turned and went and was just gone. And it's not like he was out there playing against the Little Sisters of the Poor, man. This kid played for K-State. He went up against some of the best competition in the country, and he got taken in the 6th round simply because everybody is sizist.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to kill me forever. And when Dallas comes in here, or we go to Dallas, which is it? I think we're going to Dallas. Wouldn't that be cool?
I think we go to Dallas this year.
Yeah. It could end up a Thanksgiving Day game. What do you think of that? The Patriots playing Thanksgiving again. That would be cool.
Yeah, could be
cool. But if Deuce Vaughn comes in here and burns the Patriots, I'm going to lose my freaking mind, because I just love this kid. I love.
By the way, I'm on vacation for that show, just so you know.
Okay.
You already put it in the PTO request.
Yeah, this is everybody bear witness to that request, because I have to live with this. This is what I live with. Like,
I'll get it in the DM. I mean, Murph. Wake up to a 3 DM morning from Murph.
Oh, God. I'm so glad that I have great friends that put up with me. I really am.
Oh, we love you, buddy.
Here in this room.
We love you.
2 of them are right here in this room. But, going back up to the top, Keon White is somebody that I didn't really have on my radar, because I didn't think that he was going to be there in the 2nd round. Do you think Bill thought the same thing?
Yeah. I mean,
it's just too good to pass up on.
Too hard. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the value, the potential there, because he was somebody that was, I mean, I believe he was at least invited to be
Yeah.
there because there was the expectation that he was going to come off the board in the first round. Now, in talking to people around the league, it was like, really? First round? Because I don't see that. But there was at least an idea in some circles that he was a first round pick. So to get him, when they did at 46, I think it's something you can't, because there was an idea that they might go edge.
Yep.
They might do it at 14. Lucas Van Ness
Steve.
was
I picked on Steve because he grabbed an edge in the first round in his final mock over there at Patriots 4th and 2, and I didn't think that was going to happen. But they're in round 2.
They're in round 2 at 46. I think, you can never have enough coverage. It's like pitching. You can never have enough coverage. You can never have enough pass rush. And so to get him at 46, when people thought you might go edge it. And honestly, like if you were to sort of do balance, like either or, right? Like Lucas Van Ness and then, a Joey Porter Jr. type at 46 or Gonzalez and White. Like I'll take Gonzalez and White every single day. And that's not just because of the Gonzalez love. It's White was an intriguing player. That was probably more of a first/second. Get him at 46. I like it.
There you go.
Just quickly in the chat, so Joel said White didn't seem too happy when he was picked. The camera went to him before he even knew. So everybody was like screaming and shouting about
sitting
how
there
unhappy
wondering.
He didn't even know exactly. Yeah, so he didn't know. And
I think that was the. I think that was the I was supposed to be a first round pick. Why have I not been picked yet? Kind of look.
Yeah.
There's the same look Will Levis was wearing right there.
Wow,
all Thursday
night. All night.
Yeah.
Oh,
all
wow.
night.
Yeah, that was harsh. That was harsh on him.
So, Marky,
Somebody
I want
needs
to
get
ask.
me some mayonnaise or coffee. Am I doing the chat before you carry on talking? Am I doing anything?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll finish this bit. Joel says everybody is sizist. Says the guy who likes big fat lies on the O line, Murph.
You got to have them. You have to have them. You cannot have a slim reaper there at guard. You just can't. Okay, so there's my sizism.
Yeah, I like the O line guys as well. We all know that. We all know this. I'm trying to find questions here. I've got lots of comments.
Not the comments this week.
This one's actually to Murph. Sorry, Mark. I have to ask, can Isaiah become Murph's new favorite Bolden?
I'm curious about that too.
If he starts inviting me to the family reunion, then maybe. But no.
Is this a situation if his wife likes you, like Bolden's wife likes you? Is this how it's going? Are we going to go, hey, Joe?
That's it. I actually talk to her more than I talk to Brandon. And it's usually her thanking me for saying so many nice things about Brandon.
That's incredible.
Send me 5% because I'm the one that got him a couple of free agent contracts from all the overflow of love that I've given BB Hulk Smash over the years. He's been one of the nicest people in the NFL that I have ever met, and tip of the hat to him. After it just came out this week that he is now cancer free. I don't know if everybody out there knew it. Brandon was fighting a very rare form of cancer, and he's been announced as being cancer free. So tip of the cap out to my man Brandon and his family. He's a fantastic dad, a great husband, and just a spectacular human being. So you couldn't really wish for a better fringy friend. I make jokes. Say he's not inviting me over for Thanksgiving dinner, folks. We're just, thanks, Murph.
That's
really
because
great.
you'd hit on his wife. It's exactly the same reason why Antoine won't let you go to his for Thanksgiving, because you'd hit on his mom.
Have you ever seen Antoine's mother?
I don't think so,
incredible.
because I think he's keeping her under wraps because of you.
She's incredible. Antoine Staley, another friend of the show, and
somebody friend of the show.
And somebody who is going to end up having one hell of a time this year covering the Jets for the New York Post.
He will. Oh, yes, he will.
One hell of a time.
Yep.
Yeah, we will be texting into the wee hours of the morning. Marty, I've got to ask you, who hit it at the quarterback spot this year? Who do you think is going to be the guy? And once again, as we've done many times before, who screwed up?
I do think that Carolina hit it in the sense that, and this is what I said going in. So my answer would have been the same coming out. With everything they've put around the quarterback position in terms of coaching experience and quarterback development, that whoever they drafted was going to be in a position to be successful. From Josh McCown, Parks Frazier, Frank Reich, like everybody, Jim Caldwell, everybody they have put around the quarterback position. Like it's hard to imagine that they won't have an answer for how to use the player that they drafted. Now they ended up drafting somebody that they're going to have to come up with some answers for, because Bryce Young, look, he's my size, and not an NFL general body, kids. Let's be honest. They're going to have to figure out how to use him effectively. Now, there are things that he does at such a high level where I think that, had Bryce gone elsewhere, it would have worked. But because of the talent that they've put around it, I think it could certainly work. And he's so talented. They've got such a good group around the quarterback position, like I said, with all the coaching talent, that I think it makes sense. Now, as far as who might not have done the best job, I got to say, I actually kind of like where all the QBs landed.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, Stroud's going to be in a tough spot, but he's the guy that I liked the most. He's the guy that I think was like the safest. He's like that, like nice double to the gap. Like some of these guys are home run swings, but that like Stroud is going to be at least a good average NFL quarterback. And so I think that's going to work. Maybe Minnesota with Jaron Hall.
Okay.
That one, I wanted to like Hall going in.
Yeah.
Situational awareness problems, like he's impervious to pressure, which at times is good, which at times is bad, i.e. when you're standing in your own end zone against Notre Dame, like get the ball out, buddy, like clock's ticking. Don't take a sack safety. Jake Hader is an interesting one.
At least he didn't run out of the end zone.
He stood there and took it. The Chargers with Max Duggan, that was a curious one, but you get at him in the 7th. Stetson Bennett going in the 4th, I will say, did not surprise me at all. Didn't surprise me at all. Because
who took him?
The Rams.
Rams took him.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, by the time he sees the field, there will be nothing left of the Rams.
Yeah, but that could be October.
Yeah. I mean,
because look, I've made the jokes. He's going to be the best, Toyota dealer in the state of Georgia in a year. Like his first NFL contract endorsement is the AARP. Like we've all made the jokes. He's older. He wasn't asked to do a lot in that Georgia offense, but when he was asked to do some things, he did them pretty well. I mean, he had a little bit more velocity than I thought, a little bit more athleticism than I thought. And I really believed that had he been on the board, when the Patriots were on the clock, say around 200 or so, they would have picked him. Yep. But no, the Rams picked him. So I like Stetson Bennett. I'm looking through the other list. Tanner McKee is interested because if this were 15 years ago, Tanner McKee's probably QB1. He's Joe Flacco. He's 6'6". But it's not 2005. No. So that's why you see him come off the board in the 6th round. And with Gardner Minshew now a Colt to back up and help mentor and develop Anthony Richardson, the Eagles had a need at the position. And they've done this before. They had Carson Strong last year. They brought him as a UDFA, who was a bigger, more statuesque guy, and now Tanner McKee. And so, that didn't sort of surprise me. But generally, I kind of liked where all the QBs ended up.
Mark, I asked you about the divisional guys. What I want to ask you is overall, because there's one team that sort of drafted a load of guys that I really liked. So out of the whole thing as a collective, which team do you think maybe kind of either took all the guys that you really like, kind of can be one, or if nobody really did, who do you see as, I'm not going to say won the draft because that's so wrong because we don't know, but who do you think it appears on paper really came out on top with who they managed to pick up kind of for their needs, that kind of, they're really sensible. They took what was logical. They really filled holes. They've improved their team significantly. If everyone pans out, I fully appreciate that. Which team would you say is that? And kind of who took all the ones that you really liked, if there is one?
I mean, Philadelphia. And look, every time I sat down and looked at the draft, every time I sat down and looked at team needs or whatever, it was, man, if Jalen Carter's there at 10, like they're going to run to the podium to draft him. But if he's not, because he's perhaps the best all-around player in this entire draft, if he's not, and we don't expect him to be, then man, Nolan Smith at 10 makes a lot of sense for Philadelphia. Well, what happens? They come up one spot to get Carter, and then they get Smith at the end of the first round. And then they grabbed one of my other favorite players in the secondary in the entire draft, it's Sidney Brown, the Illinois defensive back, who I absolutely loved. And when I did my round 2 mock in the wee hours Thursday night, Friday morning, I had them going with Sidney Brown in the second round, and they get him at the start of the third. And so you put that all together, and it's like, man, I just love what they did. Now, they drafted guys we thought they were going to draft. So it's like a little bit of a pat on our back when it's like, oh, they did great because they did what we thought they were going to do. So, yay, we must be smart too. So I think there's part of that. There are also, 8 general managers passed on Jalen Carter. Right. Like a number of general managers, 26 or so passed on Nolan Smith. So these players did fall, perhaps for a reason, perhaps not. But now the Philadelphia Bulldogs look pretty good because you got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. You've got Nolan Smith on the edge. You've got Nakobe Dean behind them. And when Nakobe Dean put up massive numbers his last year at Georgia before he had the pectoral injury,
I wanted him so bad.
He was playing behind those 2 guys that kept him clean. I mean, they're putting together what Kirby Smart won 2 national titles with. That's probably good business. And so I think, the Eagles did fairly well. And it's easy to sort of say. The interesting one to me is Detroit.
Yes.
Because here's the thing with Detroit, and somebody posed this exercise to me, and it blew my mind. Like, you take what they did on days 1 and 2, right?
They stole all the ones I liked.
They go Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch, Hooker. Just take those 5 picks, right? Now flip them. For a second. Imagine if they go Hooker, the QB, and Branch, the safety to start. Then you go tight end, linebacker, running back. It looks like a home run draft, right?
Right.
It's just they go linebacker and running back in the first round, and people are like, oh, wait a second. Now,
do you really think Hooker's going to translate, though, coming from the offense that he was in?
Here's the thing, and I wrote this Friday night right after the pick was made. In, say, 26 other NFL organizations, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
But their OC did a tremendous job last year with Goff because Goff was coming out of an air raid system at California.
Okay.
And you go through, and I pulled an example of Goff running Y cross for Detroit last year. It was go, crosser, curl. That's the basic, but you can dress it up different ways. And then I pulled examples of him running that at Cal. Johnson did a great job at bridging, even though Goff's been around for a while, stuff he was familiar with stuff that they're running in the NFL today. I think he can do that with Hooker because, again, Hooker's offense is even more watered down because it's a cross of, air raid stuff and Baylor's, Bryles stuff where sometimes you got a go
really
route
bastardized,
and the guys on the backside aren't even running routes. I mean, forget half-field reads. Sometimes it's a true 1 to 2 receiver read concept. And so I think that their OC can bridge the gap between Tennessee and Detroit. The question becomes, though, if Detroit has the kind of year that we expect them to, they go to the playoffs, they make a run in the playoffs. Look around the NFC. It's not as deep as the AFC, certainly not. Is Johnson their OC much longer? Because he turned down head coaching offers and opportunities for interviews. And if he gets Jared Goff to play in an MVP type level, which he could, if the Lions make a deep run, which we think they will, it's going to be hard for him to turn down offers when they come calling. And so if he's not there, does Hooker have the same opportunity? Is a different OC going to do, with Hooker what Johnson sort of did with Goff, and I think he can do with Hooker. And so, in the moment, I think it could work, but it could look a lot different this time next year.
For me, it was the 3 in the middle. It was Campbell, Laporta, and Branch. Those 3. It was like, how dare you take all of them all together on one team?
Now, look, some people look at it and say, look, the value at running back early and linebacker early doesn't make a ton of sense. And so my little exercise of flipping it around in a way sort of gives the game away, right? Because it's like, if you have to do that, maybe it's not that good of a draft. So I could see Steven Ruiz, who I love at the Raider, wrote a great piece about how it was not a good draft for them. And the arguments and stuff that he makes, it's a convincing case. I kind of like it, but maybe, it wasn't great. Some people
I can't help it. Jack Campbell was one sexy as heck linebacker, and he looked so good. And Sam Laporta, one sexy as heck tight end, so good. It's just these two. They would have, if that had been my draft, I'd have been like, oh, okay, I am fine, sorted, kind of thing. So yeah, it was, and then they got Branch as well. So it was like, yeah, I thought that I was like, is it time for me to wear blue and silver? No, I'm only kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah, I completely flipped on BYU, and I love the BYU kid. I love Jaron Hall. I thought Minnesota did really well there. It's just a feel. I like the way that he looks at the board. But in 5 years, I'm saying it now, Will Levis will be the quarterback that everybody's saying that. Why did I pass on him? Just
Tennessee's a good spot for him.
It
Tennessee's
is.
a good spot. And the interesting thing with this quarterback class, like, you know, this was a group of 4 at the top that I honestly, if you had told me that Will Levis was your QB1, I'd be like, okay, I don't go there with him, but he's still a first round quarterback in my mind. Yep. And, you know, I think with him in that offense, like, we know what they're going to look like. Right. He's going to turn around and hand it off to Derrick Henry a lot. Yep. But there are going to be moments when he turns around and doesn't hand it off and has to come out, have to turn his back to the defense and rip a backside dig. And you watch him in 21, he did that, and he did it really well. Yeah. And so I think he really fits in Tennessee. So I'm excited about him landing there. And look, I thought he was going to be their pick at 11, and they did it at the start of the second. Right. And they got the tackle to protect him at 11. So, I mean, look, credit to Tennessee. I thought they should have traded back up to take him at the bottom of the draft. Maybe the move wasn't there to get that 5th-year option on him. And folks, this isn't just because the kid played high school football in my hometown at Xavier High here in Middletown. Mark knows Xavier really well. Yeah. A lot of people talk about the swagger that certain quarterbacks have, and some people made a point of saying that he didn't have that when he walked into the room, that it seemed kind of contrived. This kid has every club in the bag, and like Mark said, what you saw him do in 21 was more indicative of who he was than what he did in 2022. Look what Will Levis did with the team that surrounded him, and you'll think more of him. Yeah, and it's one of those arguments. Like, when Tennessee made the decision to draft him, I'm sure the discussion in their room was, he'll be in a better spot with us. Like, if you're Bryce Young, you're going from Alabama to a Carolina team, which is picking first overall and coming off a rougher season. If you're CJ Stroud, you're going from throwing to Olave and Garrett Wilson and JSN and next year's potential top player on the board in Marvin Harrison Jr. to a Houston Texans receiver room, which is going to be a lot different. Like, for Levis, he's walking into an environment that, you know, might be a little bit better. It might have more stability around him. And I think that's also going to be a big benefit for him.
There you go. All right, Claire, we're in overtime. And why don't you wrap it on up?
How can we not be in overtime when we have the amazing Mark Schofield on? We could go for longer than the draft went, folks, to be honest with you, but still, we won't. We will wrap it up. So this has been another episode of One Patriots Place, brought to you by the E2G Sports Network with Clazzy Clare Cooper and Thomas Murphy. Great thanks to Mark Schofield for his time and his insight. So tune in next time, folks, and go Pats.
Go F1. Check out